And I'm just going to call it. You're 8 points up with 16, 17 minutes to go. And it wasn't a sparkling performance from England in terms of flow and attack, but they'd got themselves into a position. We rode the storm in the first half. New Zealand, watch that first half. New Zealand could have been 20 points up at half time if a couple of things were stuck. You see Satiti's ridiculous offload to Talea. There was a few other ones like that. That led to the try. But there was a few other ones like that went to deck. And we could have been 15, 20 down at half time if those things are stuck. But we stayed in the fight. And then we wrestled momentum back with game management. Marcus gets the intercept. We're starting to win collisions. We're starting to dominate in certain areas. And New Zealand looked as if they were not flustered. They were flustered. And then what we do, and I'll say it now, Steve takes off Ben Spencer and Marcus Smith. And Biggs, you're an international 10 with caps galore and all this stuff and experience. And I've said it loads. You don't change your 10 in that position. Would you take Johnny Wilkinson off in that position? No, you wouldn't. So Marcus Smith, taking him off, and the commentator said, this is the perfect scenario for Steve Borthwick. You're 8 points up. You bring George Ford on to close out the game, experience, all the caps and all this stuff. And I'm like, hold on a minute. We've got ourselves into the position to be 8 points up. We're playing well. The stadium's bouncing. We've got momentum. And by parking the bus, and effectively what he did, you've lost all the momentum. We'd started giving a couple of penalties away. And you bring George Ford on. And I'm blaming Steve for this, not necessarily George Ford.
This isn't on George Ford.
Well, it is a little bit because he made the errors. He misses the tackle, and then we'll talk about the kick and the goal kick. But we parked the bus. George Ford has played 84 minutes of rugby this year, right? And you're asking him to come on to close out a game, which is a negative mindset. Against the All Blacks, you've got your foot on the throat. You've got to go harder. You've got to try and win it and go even harder before saying to yourself, well, let's just go negative. And that's what happened. We lost all momentum. And yet, you missed the penalty and the drop goal. Drop goal's not his fault because it's a shit pass and it was all a bit of a mess. But why aren't you trusting Marcus Smith to run the game for the whole 80 minutes? Leave him on there. He's a game manager, and that's the biggest thing that England have got to say. Steve's fault. I'm blaming Steve.
For me, when you play, I did a little piece about this, and when you play Goodey, when you play 10 at international level, it's the biggest thing I find is that you've got to have a feel for the game, and you've got to have an understanding about what your team needs and where the energy of the team is, and you can only feel that when you're on the pitch. So George Ford, as fine a player as he is and as experienced and world-class as he is, hasn't got that from sitting on the bench for 63, 64 minutes. So for me, I don't think it matters if you've got George Ford, Dan Carter, Johnny Sexton, anybody on the bench. I wouldn't have changed my 9 and 10 at that point. And clearly the Marcus Smith substitution will grab all the headlines, but I almost think Ben Spencer as well. Ben Spencer, that eight points up, with 15, 16 minutes to play is tailor-made for Ben Spencer. Now, if you're 8 points down with 15 minutes to play and you need someone to break the game up a little bit, then you bring someone like Harry Randall on.
Yeah.
But for me, the timing of the substitutions were odd, and I actually thought it was probably a coming-of-age match for Marcus Smith, because what I was more impressed with him from the weekend was not that it was dazzling and it was scintillating like we all know he can play. It was the control, it was rolling his sleeves up, it was driving the team, and it was the first time I felt like that was his team. And like I said, when you play 10, it's all about having a feel for the game. And whether you're on the bench, in the stands, at home, you cannot have that feel unless you're out in the middle. And I think, look, I almost think Steve would have been better off coming out in the press conference and say, look, probably the decisions we made probably didn't quite work. And
just be honest.
And that it coincided with probably the other changes as well, which then sort of the scrum didn't quite work in that second half, did it? And that sort of creaked a little bit. But for me, that's...
You talk about his press conference, though. So the narrative that Steve used was, he kept saying that New Zealand had way more caps in their starting 15 than we had in the whole 23, yet you actually look at the substitutions he made. He brings on George Ford, 95 caps. He brings on Dan Cole, 100 and whatever caps.
Doesn't make sense.
That narrative makes... But that's his mindset of, I need to have a narrative to explain, we were close in that one.
I think as well, we chatted in the summer, Goodey, didn't we? And we said that, will England ever get a better chance to beat New Zealand than they did those two tests? I thought the answer would be no. But you said it there. Saturday was an even better chance to have beaten the All Blacks. And I'd be interested to know what you guys thought. But I have never seen, or I've certainly never played against an All Blacks team who have made that many unforced errors, gave away that many penalties and kicked as loosely as that. I'd be really interested to know what you guys thought about, but it felt to me like that was a very, very un-All Black performance.
I've always looked at the All Blacks as like the leading team, and I know the Springboks and the South African fans will hate this. South Africa do their thing, and they go about it in their way.
Yeah.
We know about them. We don't need to speak about them. But
Well,
the All Blacks,
they're the best team now, aren't they?
I know, but the
Springboks.
All Blacks have always been like the innovators, especially when it comes to attack. And I was going to ask Biggs this just because you're still playing and being in that position of fly half. I thought the amount of errors with the All Blacks is because they knew the blitz defence was coming, and they were actually trying to still take the ball to the line and try and get over the top. And obviously Wallace Satiti was just an absolute phenomenon, and actually shows you the potential way to get round the blitz, which is easier said than done, which is to
Just
go
sign
through
15 of him.
Exactly. Sign 15 of him, get through the contact and offload it out the back door. We can all do it. But when I was watching the All Blacks, they actually had the bollocks to take the ball. I know they got intercepted off one of them.
Yeah, for me, see, I'd slightly disagree a little bit with you, Jim, because you look at the All Blacks, their best moments, their tries, and when they looked a little bit more dangerous in that second half, is when they got into the 15s and they created a bit more width. You look at obviously the try for Talea's first try from the offload, which is magical. There's no blame of that. I can tell you right now, there'll be no blame attached in the defence review, because sometimes you have to just hold your hands up and say that's a moment of brilliance. But where they struggled, I thought New Zealand, I thought they played in between the 15s, which just allowed England's forwards
into the hands,
allowed England's forward, which the team that England picked, that's all England wanted to do was just roll their sleeves up, work, get up, tackle, work.
Which worked. They were physical, weren't they?
Which worked. But what they did when they had their moments and their tries and their best moments, New Zealand, is when they got into the 15 and created a little bit more width in their attack.
But is that not where the errors come from? That's what I was asking. So in order to get there, you've got to actually go high-risk rugby, which is like, you see other teams, they go like kick, they do the kick pass.
I thought their kicking game was quite good in that first half, New Zealand.
Well, they would have had a try because they went kick, didn't they?
Yeah.
And then Marrow saves a try by charging Bowden Barrett down because there's no one in that backfield.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So
for the
I
crossfield.
thought their kicking game was nice and varied in that first half. But in terms of their attacking game, I watched the game with Lester Fanganuku, who's down in Toulon, and he said he's never seen them make so many errors. And it was unforced errors. And I thought England's defence, I actually think England have put a real statement down to how to stop the All Blacks attack, because you look at the 3 tests they've played in the last 3 games, and they've just blitzed, they've kept them, they stopped them getting into the 15s. And even if you look at, I think it was Jordan's try,
Well, they sweat back for that. Didn't they?
But Ratima, he actually looks to keep the ball and keep the play in the 15s. But then obviously Bowden Barrett swings back, picks Alex Genge off, and obviously they score. But for me, what I'm saying is,
that was planned.
But almost when you play in between the 15s, they were kind of just playing sort of 1-2 pass rugby, and they were just making error after error, which then allowed England to gain momentum. And someone like Chandler Cunningham South, I thought, was just unbelievable on the day, is just lapping that up. So for me, they created problems for themselves, the All Blacks. And in fairness, I think in that last 15, 20 minutes, especially when Mackenzie came on, they got into the 15, they created a bit more width in their attack, which then you saw the error rate come down a little bit as well. So for me, it was a really, really strange performance from an All Black team. And like I said, I can tell you right now, I'm sure you guys, I've never played against an All Black team who've coughed up and given you that much in a game when you're right in it.
I think there's a bit of pressure from England's defence, but also like that last 20 minutes, they started winning collisions, didn't they? Armour was fucking ridiculous carrying.
And Patrick.
Patrick
lost
my word.
Yeah.
He looks about 50 as well, but my goodness, mate.
Ridiculous. And like for the first 60, we didn't see Ardy Severe, did we really? Like he was well contained because they weren't getting to width, they weren't attacked. They were just attacking in those close quarter bits where he wasn't as explosive. So England did a hell of a job, but then I think genuinely, the errors from substitutions, whether they're premeditated or it was like, we're ahead, what do we do? Oh, we defend the lead. Nah, you've got to keep going. And, the messages that sends on, and going back to what Dan said about the 10 and the feel of the game, it's not just the 10 though, is it? It's all the players around you. It takes time to adjust to another 10 coming on and changing. And it's like, oh, where's Marcus gone? Oh, okay, 40, we're going to kick it. And then the whole mentality changed. And I think Steve, where he made an error, obviously was the substitutions, but where he should have come out, he'd have had so much respect if he'd have just said, listen, it didn't work. That's on me.
Yeah, so everyone's been there, haven't they?
Yeah.
Where you make errors and you know that you haven't performed or you've made the wrong call or whatever.
We never get that though. We never get honesty unless you're on this podcast.
Yeah, but
or speak to Razzie on a weekend. He gives you honesty. I'll tell you.
Yeah, exactly. But if you were to be neutral about it, it was an unbelievable test match. I know there was a few errors and people were saying that there's a lot of errors, but
intensity was great,
I'll just say this, but I think the whole thing. So for me, and maybe these are very superficial things, but it's just the way that my mind works. Even the name of the stadium, so the Allianz Stadium, and not being called Twickenham, the way that the haka was done and the energy around that. Get the fucking photographers away. Move them aside so the England team can march even further and get past the 10-metre.
Well, that's World Rugby regulations.
I know.
James.
Well, I'll sort that out. But I'll just say, so even with England walking forward and Jamie George controlling that as well, and
it was brilliant, wasn't it?
The TMO coming through.
How good.
I felt like the whole occasion was a level up. And the game, yes, there was a few errors, but the game also going to the very wire. And my point as a neutral is it didn't really, I know England lost the game, so this is ridiculous. It didn't feel like England necessarily lost the game because they got hammered. I know that they did, but the moment where they hit the post, okay, and it was a drop goal at the end, the jeopardy in itself was enough to me to be like, the test match won the day as opposed to England losing.
Rugby was the winner.
I didn't want to say that. I did not want to use that line, but that's how it felt to me.
It was theatre, wasn't it? It was from when England advanced on the haka, from when they sort of a couple of brilliant tries from the All Blacks, a bit of razzle dazzle.
The hits, like Chandler Cunningham, and how he reacted to that as a young man.
I loved when Chandler Cunningham was giving it big licks and getting the crowd going as well.
See, I like that, but what I don't like in that sort of environment is when, I don't know, someone knocks the ball on unforced error or when a line-out's not straight.
Blame James. Blame James. Nick Izikwe was bad at that, wasn't he, when he came
But like you said, the penalty decision, the yellow card, the TMO with the referee being heard on the screen, even when Ford's kicked at the post, New Zealand, you think would just catch it, clear their lines, game over. He's dropped it, which has allowed the drop goal setup to happen. It was a brilliant start to the Autumn Nations series, which sets us up for a good month.
Yeah, it does. And that's the point I wanted to make, was that, as in the theatre, and I'm watching it on my fucking iPad in a room in Jersey.
Spooning Razzie.
Razzie, stop farting. But that's what I just thought. I was as a fan, and the position that we find ourselves in, the media, if you want to call us that, I don't know how I can say that. I thought it was just amazing.
So there were some positives.
There were.
Loads of positives.
Yeah.
Hit me with them then.
Faye Boso, thought he was class. He looks dangerous every time he touches the ball. Cunningham South, I thought was really good, and not in a ball carrying sense, but manning up physically, making hits. He looks hard as well, doesn't he? And when he gives it the big licks to the crowd, that was great. Marcus Smith, for me, he was voted, and ironic, he was voted by the England fans as the player of the match.
I think the halfbacks were really good. I thought Ben Spencer, I thought the combination of the halfbacks were really good. I thought George Martin was excellent in terms of every team needs somebody like him just to basically whack things, doesn't it? And I think we've talked a little bit about sort of perhaps the negativity of England not getting over the line, but I think we're only being quite harsh because they've put themselves in brilliant positions. And the positives, like you said, Goody, Faye Boso was, unbelievable. Cunningham himself, Smith, the set piece was excellent up until the sort of 60-odd minutes. And I think we're sort of negative, or not negative, but we're sort of focusing on the bits they could have done better because they put themselves, and they did so many good things during the match. And that's what's disappointing, that they probably let it slip a little bit. And I'd be interested to know what, for me, I think they keep the same 15 for next week. I don't know what you boys think.
Yeah, we're talking about a post. With England winning.
Yeah.
I know there's more to it.
I'm not having that, though.
Yeah, I know.
When Steve says we're a post width away from beating the All Blacks, no, the narrative should be we were 8 points clear and we had the game won, or we had it in our hands and we've just chucked it away.
Yeah, but that's the win and the loss. Yeah. My thing is the performance of the team. Yeah, when I look at it.
Which was great.
Which was great.
3 minutes.
They deserve huge credit for the way they've taken that game to New Zealand on Saturday. But then, conversely, they have to probably accept a little bit of of the other side where they've been in the lead, like you said, Goodey, with 8 minutes to go and with 16 minutes to go and coughed it up a little bit.
Yeah, maybe I'm being too nice. I think it shows the importance of Maro Itoje. I think England have lacked him not being at his best, giving away a lot of penalties, but I think he's now back to his best.
He was class,
not just the line-out, like England's line-out was brilliant, but almost like the DNA. And again, you go through the old guard of England. I know the 03 lads were walking around the pitch, and I hate to reference that because it almost feels like it was a lifetime ago. But the likes of a Jono and these iconic figures that England had, England have lacked that over recent years. They've been so reliant on big personalities like Owen Farrells and the Vunipolas and them players, as opposed to having like one guy where you're shitting yourself when you come out and you're in the tunnel. And Wallace Atiti is going to be that guy for the All Blacks now. Yeah. But they had a number of players. But I think Maro at that level, that any moment in time, whether or not it be in a line-out, that he's going to steal the line-out, not just in the air, but on the floor. He's going to disrupt them all, get a turnover in the breakdown as well. But he's going to be like that niggle around kick chase and tapping balls back. Not necessarily on his carry, but in every instance that you're actually worried about a player. And Maro's now back at that level. Yeah, I thought he was...
It was ace.
Yeah, he was absolutely world-class. And then the question could be, because we've asked this question about Maro, I'm not saying that Jamie isn't good enough to be captain, but does someone like Maro then, I know he's vice-captain leader, he's playing like a captain when you're watching him play. Yeah. And maybe that captaincy at some point takes him on to another level.
Yeah. Did you see him got caught in a spider's web though?
I don't like that. But I understand. I was chatting to my mate about it. It's like, why they when I was watching the football, and it's like you see the footballers going down. It's like because
it's creeping into rugby.
It is creeping into rugby. You know why? Because that's human instinct. They want to win the game. That moment there for the high shot makes, and if it is a slightly high shot, I get it. I don't like it.
Just the way he's running into the rock, though, he's caught in a spider's web, and he's just trying to. I'm like, come on, Maro. But that's the one thing, for England, and Biggs mentioned it. He doesn't like the super celebrating when there's a little knock on here or a little knock on there. If you can celebrate, you can celebrate hard. Yeah, when you celebrate hard when you've done it yourself, right? Or you've created something. But yeah, it was just, and the worst one was when Tuipulotu's knocked it on in the tackle, when it comes back off the post and they're all jumping for joy like they fucking won the game. I'm like, no, lads. Like, Ezekwe's pointing at the post. He's like, yeah. I'm like, And then we mess up the route. It should have been like a routine set play that they said they practiced, and it was just a bit messy for the drop goal. But you're right, Jim. Maro was unbelievable.
You mentioned it there, Jim. Are we lacking big ball carriers? Because I think Ben Earl led the carries, but then second best was Faye Borshaw, third was Marcus Smith. Where's...
I think when you look at a carrier now, it's more than just the carry because of the defence. And again, without keep talking about Wallace Atiti, but
how good.
But he showed it's now about carrying and freeing your arms. And in that carnage and chaos and the control which he had the ball in two hands, in one hand, his footwork. And the fact that we didn't really see Ali Sabay, because he's an out-and-out carrier. Yes, he's got the offload ability.
You heard a bit of grunting though as well a couple of times.
Well, because he's getting monstered now. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how Wallace TT goes against Ireland. Now they know how good he is in the wide channel. But I think with the carrying, and Biggs, again, still playing the game, with the blitz defence, you need more than them hard old school carries now. You need to be able to offload and distribute.
Yeah, meters after contact is a huge thing. Win the collision to be able to free your arms and get the offload away. But I think, Rob, you mentioned about where are the ball carriers. I think England went into that game on Saturday with the approach of almost not wanting the ball a huge amount, wanting to pressure New Zealand, keep New Zealand between the 15s and force errors from them. So I think sometimes stats can be a little bit misleading, because I think sometimes if you're playing a game where you almost don't want the ball a huge amount, clearly your carries are going to be low. But what I do love about Faye Boso is I wouldn't even you can almost play with no number, because he's not a winger as such, is he? He's basically popping up off 9. He's popping up in the wide channels. He's popping up inside 10, whatever it is. He's just getting his hands on the ball, and that's what I like about this New England team. I'd be really. I don't know. This may be a bit controversial, but do New Zealand win? I said at the start of this Autumn Nation series that New Zealand could not inconceivably be 0 from 3 from their first 3 matches against.
They have got the toughest.
They've got the toughest thing, but this is the All Blacks and everything. So they got over the line against England just about. Probably shouldn't have, but did. So full credit to them for that. Do they win in Dublin on Friday?
This is the thing. So you look at it, and you're 8 points down. I'll flip it on its head a little bit. you're 8 points down against England. They go on to win the game. Ireland don't lose that game with Owen Farrell. Sorry, Ireland don't lose that game with Andy Farrell as head coach. South Africa don't lose that game 8 points up, do they? And that's where England need to get to. So for them, it's huge. You're right. And now the drama this weekend, everything that's gone on. Do you reckon Ireland are going to be pumped for this game or what?
Oh, I think so.
Do you think? I don't think Rico Ioane will come to the live show on Wednesday, mind.
Oh,
I think
imagine if he does.
If he does, that's world class.
Imagine if Rico Ioane comes to the live show and then gets man of the match at the weekend.
So we got to hang out with the All Blacks as well.
Nah, we're Irish. We're Irish.
We are Irish.
Jim?
Well, you're a Springbok.
Do the All Blacks win on Friday night?
No.
Do they win the following week against France, or is it too early to see?
Yeah. French will be half-assed. No, they always struggle there, don't they? On
They
November.
do struggle. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be closer, not than people think. I think we'll see the very best version of the All Blacks, but I think Ireland, the number one team in the world, at home, the quarterfinal, and the pain and the hurt from that at home.
Yeah.
Ireland's going to be unbelievable. It's going to be bouncing on Friday night. Desperate men for a massive occasion. I just think that game was so tough for New Zealand.
A couple of injuries as well.
But you can't write off the All Blacks now.
No.
And as you lads know, or we kind of all know, that momentum going into it, off the back of the win against England, they've now have belief in what they can do when they're not playing at their very best.
Yeah. And interesting when you say about getting the win against England, one thing we haven't spoken about, and Biggs will appreciate this, Damien McKenzie's conversion to win the game.
That was an unbelievable
from the
kick.
toughest. That's the toughest place for a right-footed kicker to get a conversion from.
See, I always preferred that touchline to the other touchline. Were you not the same?
The other side.
It looks harder on TV.
Yeah, but all the pressure that he's been under, he's lost his position to Bowden Barrett, coming off the bench, question marks. His goal kicking, that kick, and the difference between win and lose, it was phenomenal.
It's really fun. Even Barrett's touchline conversion in the first half, you think when the score is 5-3 or 12-3 or whatever, you think that has no real material effect on the game.
No, it does.
But it has a huge, huge effect. And like I said, and I thought Marcus Smith was magnificent on the weekend. But,
slotted everything.
A couple of drop goal misses, one of them goes over, the game's different. But what I mean is I'm not having a go at Marcus for that. I'm just saying how almost every point available in test match rugby is so important to take. And that's why Goodey got paid the big bucks.
Pod.
Rugby pod.